This is a Momentum Media production.
Welcome to the Smart Property Investment Show, the podcast by investors for investors.
Well, good day everyone, it's Liam Garman here, Managing Editor of Real Estate at Momentum Media, the team that brings you the Smart Property Investment Show. And today I'm solo. I'm solo in the studio because my co-host, Emilie, Lauer, is working from home. Emilie, what's going on?
Well, we are on the brinks of our REB Awards tonight, which means girls needs time to be ready for the ceremony.
That is true.
So I decided to work from home, and I have to say, having the image of you being alone in the studio, I feel a little bit sad.
It is quite sad.
I feel like I should be next to you.
It is a big studio for one person, and I was running around because we've got so many studios here. I was running around trying to find which one. But REB Awards will be fantastic tonight. Do keep an eye out. This podcast will be out before the award winners are announced. So keep an eye on that as we recognise the best and brightest and leading professionals right across Australia's property sector. But you're not here to listen to Emilie and myself gossip and chat about working from home. You're here to listen to the experts, people far smarter than ourselves. And I'm joined by two people that need no introduction, Tabitha, Robb and Sam Davenport from Prop Culture, real estate agents and founders of Prop Culture. Tabitha, Sam, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
And I can see you've got a massive Prop Culture sign right behind you. Both of you, talk to me. You're real estate agents now, founders of Prop Culture, property advocacy company. What it is that you do on a day-to-day, how you help clients in the world of real estate.
Sure thing. So Sam and I are actually both ex-selling agents, and that's a bit of our secret sauce as to how we help clients on this side of the fence, on the buyer's side of the fence. We just, in our selling days, saw buyers get it so wrong, just had no idea what they were doing. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. How do you know the questions to ask, what to look out for when you've never done it before and you're doing it with your life savings? So we just thought that this is such a valuable thing to get involved with, the buying side, not the selling side. So we've had Prop Culture for 7 years now. We help buyers in sort of metro Melbourne. We keep our area pretty tight, source amazing A-grade real estate and secure it for them. So that includes everything from the reporting and the due diligence around pricing and, making sure they're not buying next to a 10-story building that's about to be built, right through to bidding and negotiating and, just working hard for the other side of the fence because selling agents do it so well and have done it so well for so long for the vendors.
Well, Tabitha, you've opened up a new question, which is you said that buyers can get it wrong. So what is it that you saw in your experience as a real estate agent? And then maybe after yourself, we'll throw across to Sam. In your history as real estate agents, what were some of those common errors that kept coming up that made you both think, oh, actually, there is a job here for us and we can really help deliver quality services for our clients?
Well, two exact examples spring to mind. The first being they just really think short term and they think really insular in terms of, okay, I'm renting in Richmond, let's buy in Richmond. And so what you can afford as a young couple or young single person isn't that much. And is that going to build you wealth and do what you want to do to be that launch pad onto the next property? I mean, I was guilty of it too. I bought my first property at 22, a stone's throw from my family home, just because it felt really safe. And I think that's what a lot of buyers do, and that's probably not the right way to come at it. And the second thing is just negotiations and at auctions. I mean, in our market that we look after, we're auction-centric in inner city Melbourne. And, a lot of auctions do pass in, as we see in the stats, and it's just like lambs to the slaughterhouse when they walk in negotiating against us. And I just thought, oh, God, also I'm there to work for the vendor. That's who's paying me. I did feel quite sorry for these first, second, third home buyers. Oftentimes they just, they've got their price. We inflate the vendor's reserve because that's a negotiation tactic, but they just have no idea what they're doing. So those are two parts of the process that I really personally love to be involved with. They're just, hey, let's think about this long term and the 5 to 7 year plan and hey, let's make sure, the playing field's even and you've equally got a good negotiator working for you like the vendor has for them.
And Sam?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest misconceptions with people in the property market, particularly in Melbourne, is that buying property builds wealth and that one equals the other. And it's just not the case. So you've got to dig down in through the Melbourne property market to look at exactly what does perform well and what isn't performing from a capital growth perspective. So when we're working particularly with first-time buyers who, when we were selling agents, we sold all of our apartments to first-time buyers and sometimes also investors who were looking to, build their portfolio, which is a little bit of a different sort of area than what I'm talking about. But when you've got younger or first-time buyers who are looking to buy property to build wealth, that means that property needs to perform well for them. So educating our clients now around exactly what property types and areas and locations are going to give them that performance that's going to help them into their next purchase. So that's really one of the key factors that I think we come at it with buyers based on our experience as selling agents.
It is something that we hear all the time. Those two examples, the negotiation and the research. A lot of people, especially if you're a first home buyer, unless you've gone to prior negotiations before, but still you're so green that you are liable to overpay. And it comes in all tactics. It could be, it's just the extra 5-10 grand that will get you over the line. You can finally sign the contract, get over the dotted line. But one thing that we talk about with a lot of our guests on this show is, well, that 5-10K is kind of most of the way to your buyer's agent fees anyway. You've actually kind of closed that gap a lot. And so then any off-market benefits that you get goes into the back pocket, or even just support throughout the contracting, conveyancing, building a pair strata, et cetera, processes that you can streamline. These are benefits that you're getting. And the research aspect that you were saying before, Tabitha, I couldn't agree more, because a lot of people, they, especially when they're looking for a PPOR, they fall into that trap of, it's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. And especially when we have this great debate around the affordability aspect, you do need to put yourself out of your comfort zone, because on the flip side, you might end up buying in a better area for something which is so marginally just tiny more, but you could have a much better quality of life because you're willing to step outside of the bounds of what you're expecting. Now, I've been talking. I think Emilie must have a few questions on her end as well.
Yeah, look, I think it's a very interesting part of your job to help first home buyers to get through the first property and then hopefully have them become investors in the future. I'm also interested in, how you can help people to sell their property, because I think when it comes to selling a property, it's really hard for either first home buyers or investors to sell that first properties. When is a good time to sell?
Yeah, so when we're looking at when is a good time to sell, it's a massive question, which obviously, you do need to drill down into property type and location to answer that properly. So obviously down on the peninsula, for example, Mornington Peninsula, a great time to sell property down on Mornington Peninsula is during the summer school holidays. So obviously avoiding Christmas, ideally even early January. They have a huge number, volume of properties that transact in January. Generally speaking, the two types of buyers who are buying down there are holiday homeowners and then owner-occupiers who live there full-time. So both of those parties are in that area at that time of year. So you wouldn't really do a midwinter sale for a big, beautiful home on the beach in Portsea. You'd probably wait until the summer market to put that one on the market. And then if you look at sort of inner-city apartments, the demand from buyers for that type of property is all year long. So the demand for that property type doesn't necessarily fluctuate through the year. So perhaps going on the market in an oversaturated market in spring, summer, beginning of the year, first quarter of the year is not the best idea. Perhaps you might try and pick a lower sort of stock level time of year through winter. So you might be more suited to a winter sale. And then if you're inner east and you've got, a beautiful garden that just sells the property, you've got to wait till spring, which is what everyone else in the area does. So if you don't have that beautiful garden that's really going to add value to the sale of the property, you would avoid spring. So the answer is not one size fits all, like with everything in real estate.
Yes. Look, people are expecting the market to rebound, especially now that we've had the first RBA cut. Are you expecting more sellers down in the Melbourne markets?
From a selling perspective, we are seeing stronger stock levels now than we have done for a few years. So we're expecting that to continue, and there's a lot of factors driving that, and one of them being the fact that a lot of investors are looking to exit the Melbourne market and invest in different states. So the stock levels have been very strong. They will continue to be very strong. We don't foresee there to be a big drop in that or a huge increase in that.
So it'll hold steady.
It'll hold.
Now, obviously, this whole game is you're both as a real estate agent, as a buyer's agent, you're trying to align those vendor-buyer expectations. But oftentimes you see, especially in your area where you're prioritizing at the moment, you do have those emotional factors that might potentially impede a seller, whether they're an investor or a PPOR, that impede them wanting to sell their property. How do you negotiate those emotional factors? Because I'm sure there's probably entire PhD theses written on people just anchoring onto their investment property, not wanting to sell, or anchoring onto their houses, not wanting to sell. How do you guys negotiate that?
The right time to sell is when it's the right time for you. So we're certainly not here to convince people to do things that they don't feel comfortable doing. So we would usually, in a conversation like that with someone who's unsure of what they want to do, we would work out sort of a bit of a 5-year strategy, a bit of a 2-year strategy, a bit of a 12-month strategy, and try and find the point at which it makes most sense to sell for them. So real estate is a long game. Our funnel goes 10 years deep. It is not, they're not quick decisions, and they're not decisions to be made lightly. So if there are reservations from a client, we certainly do not push them into selling. We explain to them current market conditions. We get, multiple valuations from local real estate agents to support an appraisal price in current market. We talk about quotes of, this is how much it will cost you to sell. And then we work out whether or not that feels comfortable for them. I mean, I have many sellers who, we're 2-3 years into the conversation and they're only just now coming to market. And I put zero pressure on those clients. They have to feel comfortable. It's a huge life-changing decision to make. So it's got to come from them.
Now, a lot of people are going to be looking at potentially renovating their property before they sell, which I know to both of you, Tabitha and Sam, it's a key that you guys do. It's an area of expertise that you both have. Do you have to renovate your property before you sell it if people choose to? What are some of the key tips that you offer to people prior to selling in terms of renovations?
So renovate sounds overwhelming. Blow up doesn't sound overwhelming.
Okay,
so we're going with a glow up. We're going with a zhuzh.
Yeah.
And, we always say, and we said this as selling agents, we say this as vendor advocates, if we're spending money on pre-sale works to sell your property, we're spending $1 and the return's got to be $3. So whether that looks like redoing the carpets and that's $7,000, okay, well, we want $20,000. If we're painting the property, okay, if that's going to be whatever, $5,000, we're getting $15,000 return. So if it doesn't make sense like that, then it doesn't make sense. So it really comes down to the particular property. But it would be highly unlikely for us to recommend huge kitchen overhauls and huge kitchen, like bathroom renovations from scratch. It might be, a changing the mirror. It might be a changing the vanity, these quick little things that we can get tradespeople in quickly, because that's another thing, the holding costs of these properties, you want to make sure that sort of works as well. So I mean, there's really different factors that people need to consider when they sell, especially investment properties. I mean, number one tip I would give is speak to an accountant, your accountant first, to make sure it makes sense from a numbers standpoint, because that's why we all hold investment properties. But yeah, I mean, the numbers when you renovate or blow up a property for sale need to stack up before you get going. Like, you've got to see that this is really going to make an impact on the sale price.
I tend to agree, especially with the holding of an investment property has to make financial sense. A lot of people that we speak to and a lot of people that I speak to day to day have this kind of forever holding, this forever holding strategy, which, especially for a lot of my friends that have bought in, say, Western Sydney, where over the last 10 years, some of them have had mind-blowing returns. And it's like, mate, find a new market. And you could, for the price of that one place you bought in Western Sydney, you could probably buy 4 or 5, and then you can ride that wave. Speaking to the accountant, it is a financial game, right? So I do appreciate what you're saying. So a vanity, right? So we're not talking about ripping up tiles. We're not talking about moving a bath or moving a shower. We're not talking about new plumbing. A vanity is is it literally as easy as getting a tradesperson to take the old one out and putting the new one in?
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, we often say that we need the buyer's advocate or vendor's advocate title with renovator co-pilot sort of title on the back of that, because I mean, it's such a great way to quickly get uptick in your property. We love manufacturing growth through renovations for our clients or glow ups. And it can be as easy as ripping off the old blinds and putting beautiful IKEA shears. Super cheap, super easy, get a handyman, done in not even half a day. That's the sort of stuff you want to be doing to these investment properties or any property really when you go to sell. Garden declutters. I mean, depending on the property.
Now, a lot of people, I've not actually done a renovation myself, which is why I've been so keen to get you both on the podcast to talk through it. And I do appreciate the idea of a glow up because you're kind of reverse engineering that psychological barrier that we all have. And I was actually talking about this with my wife a few weeks ago about, do we look to get into the renovation game? And then we both decided, it's so much of a headache. It's so much this, it's so much that, we can't be bothered. But when you word it like this, it seems quite easy. Now, obviously, you might not have the numbers on hand for this, but something like a new carpet or something like new blinds seems very easy to do. Realistically, how much money could you expect to make for something that seems quite easy?
Yeah, it's very dependent on obviously the size of the property, but generally speaking, on a regular property in Melbourne, so this is going to range from, a 2 to 3 bedroom apartment to a 2 to 3 bedroom house. So you'd be looking at, for new carpet throughout, between sort of 5 and 10,000. For painting, you'd be looking at between 7 and 13,000, interior only, exterior another sort of 10 on top of that. So when we say glow up, it's definitely glowing it up, but it's often between $20,000 to $50,000 worth of what we would consider basic pre-sale work. And so that's getting the garden totally tidied up and decluttered and ready. And this is when you say pre-sale, if they haven't done it pre-sale and you've bought the property, you should do it pre-move-in, so that you're getting the benefit of enjoyment out of that, but you're also doing the pre-sale works before it comes time to sell. So, as Tabitha said, all new curtains and blinds. I mean, if you get them from IKEA, you can get away with doing 10 windows under $1,000.
Yeah, wow.
But if you get someone custom measuring your blinds, you're going to be spending about $7,000. Now, if you're a homeowner who's planning to live there for 25 years, definitely get custom blinds. If you're a homeowner who's planning to live there for 25 years, get beautiful wool looped carpet. If you are not, and you are the property's worth under $700,000, that's sort of a bit of a marker. If it's worth under $700,000, do not spend too much money on anything you do. Nothing custom, nothing too outrageous. Go nice and neat and neutral. And yes, we're creating 1,000 white boxes in Melbourne, but what the idea is that you want to help the next person see themselves comfortably moving in there and living there and see their life there. You don't want them to see your life in the property and think about who you were and what you did there. It's keeping it fresh and clean so that they can put themselves in the property, and that generally gets more buyers emotionally attached.
Absolutely. Now, I think I said to you both before this podcast, I wouldn't ask any gotcha moments, but maybe I was a fibber.
Of course you were.
I know.
You let us straight into it. I got my back up as soon as I was like, right, here we go.
No. It's actually not too bad. This all makes sense, but especially with the apartment piece, with external work, a lot of it have to go through strata. So perhaps for our investors that are listening that might have an investment unit that they're looking to potentially sell, the last time they did their recce, they noticed that the outside was not great, and that from that perspective of buyers coming in and saying, hey, can I actually look at this? Or renters coming in, hey, how can I see myself living in this? How do you go about negotiating with strata? Say you're selling for a client and the outside is really bad and you think, hey, this is really going to impact our sales price. How do you guys negotiate that?
So a few different tips. We'll just say, investors, if you are buying into a block, you can't be super passive. Unfortunately, property, and especially investment properties in Victoria, are now not sit back and relax and put your feet up and the money comes rolling in anymore. So you do need to be a little bit active throughout the process. And that's where I see that people can actually really win. If you buy into a block that's got a pretty shabby exterior, get on the body corporate committee, be proactive, get people chipping in a little bit extra a quarter. You've now held this investment property for 4 to 5 years. You've built up a little bit of a kitty. And then next minute, you're the head honcho on the OC committee and you're putting in a new fence, a sliding fence, maybe painting the exterior of a property, putting in new light fixtures in the communal areas, whatever that looks like. But that can be a really good play for investors because you've actually only put in a really small amount in the overall scheme of things, but you've had a complete transformation of the external. I mean, I did it on that first property that I was speaking about. We had a horrible front fence, as most of those, the older blocks do. And, by year 4 of me holding that property, we'd had a new fence put in, new mailboxes. It was a secure entrance now. So I think that's what people can do. But if you've sort of left it to the last minute and haven't done that over a 4-year period, you can always ask the body corporate, hey, I'm selling. Do you mind if I just get a gardener through to give it a quick tidy before I put it on the market? Sometimes that's a $500 investment.
Which is pretty reasonable for the returns that you'll get.
Absolutely. I went through an apartment block recently and there was just no care by the agent to advise. And it must have been an interstate investor because if you walk past a block, you would have known it. Just need someone to take some rubbish away or, tidy the bins and have some care or order some more bins so the rubbish actually goes in the bin. But, that first impression when a buyer walks into a block, especially young females, feel a sense of security, sense of that can really impact whether you have a buyer there bidding or whether, you don't. So first impressions count.
And I'm sure both of you throughout your careers would have seen it before where you see the car come up and then, oh, here we go. Here's someone looking at the open to inspect and then they walk out, they have a quick look, don't even bother walking in, then immediately drive off. You've shut the gate before people have even had a chance to inspect and understand what the property is. Now we got to go to a quick break and we'll be back in just a second. We're back. It's Liam Garman and Emilie Lauer from the Smart Property Investment Show with Tabitha, Robb and Sam Davenport from Prop Culture. Now, Emilie, I've been hogging all the questions and I'm sorry because I can see you furiously writing away, so I can only assume you've got a few.
Yeah, look, definitely. Look, we're talking a lot about changing the carpet, changing some vanities. They still have a cost attached to it. And I do understand that for investors and some buyers, that extra cost, they can get it out of the pocket. However, we know the, cost of living pressures, they're quite high at the moment. And for some owner occupiers that have a mortgage, getting out those 20 extra K is impossible. Is there some do-it-yourself hack that we can give our listeners to actually give that extra glow up to the property that are not going to cost that much money?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, you can do anything yourself, Emilie. Just put your mind to it and you can make it happen. So in terms of what you can do yourself and what I see a lot of people do themselves, I mean, I'm a queen of outsourcing. I love to get professionals in to finish things to a really high standard, and I would rather save to get it done properly. But I'm not that handy. So if I was handy, certainly changing all cabinetry hardware. So little door handles, little knobs, little pulls, little anything on all of your built-in robes, on all of your kitchen cabinetry, your bathroom cabinetry. Changing hardware.
And that doesn't have to be expensive, the hardware. Go to Kmart, go to IKEA, go to Bunnings. They've all got great selections that really transform the look of a bathroom or kitchen.
Absolutely. As in $5 per knob, for example. And then if you want to take that one little step further, you might do all of the door handles, for example, so that now you've got a seamless look through the property. That adds value. Another thing that I've seen a lot of people doing on good old Instagram, where we love to see some DIY, people really giving it a go, is repainting kitchen cabinets. So taking them off the hinges, sanding them back, painting it with a laminate paint, and putting them back up. And that changes everything. If you've got sort of an exterior of a kitchen island bench that's visible and perhaps it's dated in its colour or its material, painting that or covering that. I mean, you can get, super cheap wall coverings now where it's, panelled wall coverings that you can cut sides to literally glue on there and then paint that. So there's so many little things you can do if you just look at it a little bit more creatively. I mean, curtains and blinds, number one, just get in there, rip out anything that's old, discoloured, yellowed, ratty, get it down straight away. You're better off with nothing on the window than that. And if you obviously need and want the privacy of a blind, just put something simple out, basic. Again, you can get Spotlight. I've got amazing linen curtains. 100% linen from Spotlight. I think they're $80 for a pair, and some windows only need one side. So now you've got two windows covered for $40 each. So there's a lot of different things that people can do alone. Painting, paint your house yourself. If you don't have access to that $5 or $7 grand, buy the paint and just get at it. Takes time, but
well, it just brings me to the point that I feel like the way it looks and that first impression is actually kind of that big selling point, where people basically fall in love with the property at first sight. I'm wondering how important is staging your property if you want to have people, fell in love with it?
Yeah, I mean, we get inspired with our eyes. We buy with our eyes, don't we? So if you're looking at one beautifully styled property and then one that's vacant, no hire furniture or tenanted, or the owner, but very unlikely that they've taken no care and they've still got their clothesline out. I mean, I know which one I'd be buying and which one I'd be seeing myself in and which one I'd be paying a premium for, which is the most important part. The ones that are beautified, and because if we're talking about apartments, you're typically selling to a lot of first-home buyers, so they do get wooed by that sort of thing. But don't do the budget hire furniture package because that also can look cheap and nasty and be counterproductive. So make sure you get examples of the hire furniture company sort of styling palette. Yeah.
Well, now you brought up the hire furniture, Tabitha, I've got a question. Now, in your experience, well, I think everyone throughout their journey in one way or another has been not burnt in a bad way. Maybe it's an over-exaggeration, but, if you're looking for a place to rent and you see these beautifully staged photos on the internet and you get there and you're like, oh, wow, you've clearly staged it very well because it doesn't look like this in person. Is there a risk where you've performed almost too well on your marketing campaign that people come in and they're actually more thrown off because it really just didn't meet the expectations that they saw online?
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic oversell and underdeliver. There's nothing worse that you can do to a buyer because they immediately have a negative connotation to that property. Whether or not the property is fantastic, if they thought it was going to be better than it is, that's a negative connotation and they'll walk away thinking it was now worse than it is. Whereas if you sort of undersell and overdeliver, and that's sort of why you'll often see a lot of properties with agents who know exactly what they're doing, won't have a photo of every single corner of the property because you want buyers to come in and see something they weren't expecting and feel positive about what they've seen. So yes, you can absolutely oversell it online. I mean, there's a huge trend now, particularly in the apartment market, because it is such a cheap alternative option. And look, there's nothing wrong with this. I do still think there's a place for it, but using AI generated images for staging in the photos, but in person, obviously the property is empty. So if that property on physical inspection is really beautifully clean and light and bright and all of the lights are working and everything feels fresh and it smells good and the agent's great, that's fine. But if you go there and it's dark and dirty and there's no lights and it smells funny, and that's where you're going to get into trouble with overselling it online with AI generated images with furniture versus having it empty.
Absolutely. And the only reason I asked is because I saw an example of that only recently, just looking through. It's a property that I know very well, and they made it look like they had a very big courtyard, but it didn't have a courtyard. And I'm like, I was looking at the photos, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is just actually lying. And then it kind of erased that question as to like the photos, sure, like good campaign, I guess, if you want interested parties to come by. But at what point do you do more damage than good? It's like you're saying, people leave actually thinking worse than the property is. And again, I'm sure there's PhD theses written on the psychological aspects of that. We got to go to a quick break. And when we're back, we're going to discuss the Melbourne market. We'll be back in just a second. Liam Garman, Emilie Lauer, joined by Tabitha, Robb and Sam Davenport from Prop Culture. And you both are experts in the Melbourne market. You know it back to front. Now, the Melbourne market it's got a little bit of a bad rap over the last few months. Maybe that's not fair for investors taking their money out of the Melbourne market and investing it elsewhere. I think is a more reasonable way of putting it. Now that we have seen rates drop and now the bank's passing that on as well, what do you expect to see happen in the Melbourne market over the next 12 months?
Yeah, very interesting question. I mean, I think that there's two markets down here. There's owner-occupiers and there's investors, and I don't think we'll be seeing investors flock to our market, despite the numerous podcasts I hear saying that we're the market that is next to boom for investors. I think what people don't realise, especially interstate investors, is we've got a very different our market's very different down here in terms of the regulations for landlords and the additional costs added to the calculations on holding that property. So in my opinion, the smart investors will still be staying in different states. I don't think this rate change will change that. I think it will certainly encourage more owner-occupiers to jump into the market. I mean, we all know it's supply, demand and confidence, and a rate cut builds confidence. And so, yeah, I think we'll certainly see more buyers enter and participate in our market, but I'm not sure there'll be investors.
Emilie, we did a podcast only recently where what is the land tax? I thought the guest said the land tax was only like
$1,000 or something like this.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It depends how much your property portfolio here in Victoria is, but I'm talking about other things. So we've got our laws down here heavily favour the tenant's rights. I'm speaking from both a landlord perspective and a tenant's perspective. I am both. I'm a rent investor. And it massively deters you from wanting to be a landlord in our market because, I mean, I had tenants in one of my properties and they weren't paying and I just couldn't get them out.
Wow.
Our only way of getting them out was through VCAT, and I was waiting 3, 4, 5 months for a VCAT hearing. VCAT kept putting them on payment plans. They kept not paying. And then finally there was a reason why I couldn't get them out, a personal reason. But it was just an absolute nightmare. And I was not the only story. As soon as I started speaking about that to people, they were like, oh, that happened to this friend and impossible to get them out and they just don't pay and their rights are much greater than the landlord's. So that, and then coupled with that is our level of compliance down here. So the minimum standards, and a lot of them are fair and reasonable. Like we don't want mold in our properties down here, but a lot of them are like gas compliance, electrical compliance every 2 years. You know, plumbers are having a field day. If you want a new career, become a plumber because they're just licking their lips down here with just investment properties and the work they can get through that. So I'm quite passionate about the Victorian investment market at the moment, being in it, because I just think that it's definitely not. We get calls from interstate investors, and I just say, just have a think about this because it's not just a financial commitment; it's certainly an emotional one and a mental one.
I think it's very interesting because we've had quite a few guests on the podcast that have actually set their eyes on the Victorian property market and the Melbourne market as investors. When do you expect it to bounce back for investors then? What does it need to get investors back in it?
Good question. Look, to be honest, we're going to have great growth. We are a fast-growing city. Our immigration's fantastic. Our workforce is fantastic. So we are always going to be growing. I just think people will need to be far more careful of what they buy, where they buy it, how it's presented, what tenants they're attracting. So, you know, as you mentioned, Western Sydney, which I'm not too familiar with that, but I could imagine that was once sort of a more gentrifying area when your friends bought in there. I think people will need to be a bit more careful about buying into those areas and just what tenants are getting into their property. I'm not too sure because our taxes and our compliance are not coming down anytime soon. That's here to stay.
It plays into the risk aversion strategy that people have to onboard, because when you do look at the fear that a lot of people have with a land tax, okay, it's actually not as high as you think, but then you do run into the risk, like you're saying, which is if you have a tenant in there for months, which won't pay, suddenly this becomes a very, very, very unviable investment that you're holding. You're losing money on this by this point. So you have to factor into your personal investment strategy is like, well, okay, you might get a good buy in the Victorian market, but if you do face those, well, you could be up some serious financial strife.
Yeah, it's not all about the land tax. That was sort of, not the final straw, but it was just that last little clincher that pushed probably a lot of people who were already thinking about exiting the Victorian market and not buying back into property at all. So we've got a lot of older, boomers who have been told and have been taught and have very successfully managed to buy multiple properties in Victoria, and they have a big portfolio. It's those types of people who are minimising their portfolio, because once you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 properties, your land tax is no longer $1,000. It's much higher cost. If you inherit a property, your land tax on that property is astronomical. So, yes, there's examples of times where it's only $1,000, but that is not the case across the board, like with everything we're talking about. There is an absolute spectrum for everything in real estate. And some properties and some landlords will have a $1,000 tax bill. A lot of people will have far more than that. So there's a lot more at play than simplifying it to, there's land tax only $1,000, so therefore the investor should come back. I think like all good things, shoulder pads are back, big hairs back, everything will come back. The investors will come back. I don't know when or why or what will happen. It'll probably be some great articles by you guys pumping up the sentiment in the market and things like that that'll get people thinking, maybe now's the time to buy them in. Our purchase price is still so much lower than somewhere like Sydney that for an investor, where should they buy? Maybe they should buy Melbourne if they're considering Sydney. Why would they buy Sydney if Melbourne's also an option? So, I think, yes, they'll come back, but right now they are offloading in masses and they're all being purchased by owner-occupiers. So that poses a new issue for the next couple of years over the tenancy issue of what's going to happen there. But, yeah.
So, look, to wrap us up, what are some areas that investors should be keeping their eye on in Victoria?
Well, since we buy Metro Melbourne, we should probably we stick to what we know.
Give it a plug.
Obviously, you stick to train lines, stick to connectivity in Melbourne. So anywhere that is on a train line are great sort of pockets. I think the Western corridor of Melbourne is going to sort of really pick up, just given the Westgate Tunnel. And when that builds, so that's my tip. Can't give too much away.
No, definitely. I would just, absolutely. The Western corridor has absolutely got so much growth left in it. And same with down the bay between Brighton and Portsea, Melbourne's two of Melbourne's most expensive suburbs. All of the suburbs that lie along the bay down there, they've got heaps more growth left in them, I think. But yeah, it's property type. If you are buying an apartment, you must have a car space. It cannot be a stacker. You must have outdoor area. You shouldn't have overlooking in your main living area or your balcony. You need access to natural light. Don't buy something, in something that's going to be built up right next door. It's all these fundamental factors that can be applicable to any area. If you stick to the fundamentals, you'll be fine.
Good 1%ers because they all add up, as you said. Look, that is all we have time for today. Thank you both so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been awesome. Thank you.
That was Tabitha, Robb and Sam Davenport from Prop Culture, and that is all we have time for today on the Smart Property Investment Show. But until next time, bye-bye.
The information featured in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into consideration your financial situation or individual needs and should not be relied upon. Before making any investment, insurance, tax, property or financial planning decision, you should consult a licensed professional who can advise whether your decision is appropriate for you. Guests appearing on this podcast may have a commercial relationship with the companies mentioned.